Hi, I'm Lindy, and we have Lacy Starling here to talk to us today. Lacy, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am the owner of two businesses here in the Cincinnati area. I own Legion Logistics, which is a third-party logistics brokerage, which means that when companies need freight moved, they call us and then we find the trucks to move their freight. So we move things like full truckloads of ice cream across the United States or tanks for the US military. Anything that can go on a big semi truck that goes down the highway, that's what we do. We move those. And then I've had that business for 11 years now, and we have 18 employees in our office in Florence, Kentucky. And then just recently, I started a sales consulting business, and that is in Covington, which is an exciting new part of my journey here as an entrepreneur. And I have a 9.5-year-old daughter named Catherine, and her school does American Heritage Girls. So I know that's not quite the same as Girl Scouts, but it's somewhat similar. And so it's been really fun. I was a Girl Scout when I was in elementary school and learned a lot from that experience. So when you all reached out to me to do this, I was really excited to be able to participate and talk to girls and women in the area about my journey and anything that I've learned.
So, I heard you started a new business. Can you tell us about starting your own business and like how how how, how you started your own business and what empowered you to begin that journey?
Sure. I actually started my first business when I was still getting my bachelor's degree. So my undergraduate degree is in journalism. I was going to be a newspaper reporter. And when I was in college, I met some other students who were also in the journalism program, but were starting a business doing web design for bars and restaurants in Kent, Ohio, because I went to Kent State University. And I know this is going to be hard for the younger folks in the audience to believe, but there was a time before bars and restaurants had websites, and it was a bleak and terrible time. You never knew what was on the menu. You didn't know what the specials were. You couldn't find their hours. And our job was to go around to these places and sell them on the idea of having a website. And originally I joined the team because I was going to write for the website, right? I was going to write content. I was going to write restaurant reviews, do that. And I started going to meetings with potential customers, and I realized I was actually pretty good at sales when I liked what I was selling. I really believed in the idea of having websites for restaurants. I thought it was important, and it was easy for me to sell it. And then they found out that I was the only person who could balance my checkbook in the team. And so they handed me the QuickBooks login and they said, okay, you're now in charge of finance too, which was ironic considering I had not taken a math class since I was a junior in high school, right? But business math is not that hard. So it started in me this love of entrepreneurship and business ownership that I didn't know I had. I thought I was going to be a newspaper reporter forever. I thought that was the job that I was going to have. And I realized that there were so many other really interesting things that I could do with the skill set that I had that would also engage other parts of my brain, right? So doing finance for business is something completely different than writing newspaper articles. And my dad had always had a construction business on the side, right? What you would call a side hustle now, back then you just called, extra money, right? So he always had a side hustle going on when I was growing up, and I saw him running that business and working for other people, and it sort of inspired that in me. And from that point, when this little business that I started in Kent to the point where I am now, where I have two businesses, it's really just been that path of working for other people, working for myself, figuring out what it is that I want to do and how I want to do it. And most recently, starting the consulting company has come out of a desire to work with other business owners, so especially women. I work with Aviator Accelerators, which is a women's business accelerator in Northern Kentucky that helps women who have business ideas turn those into actual businesses. So either at the very beginning of their launch stage or when they're trying to grow their business. And that for me has been so rewarding that I thought I should do this more, right? I enjoy freight and I enjoy logistics, but I should do more of this type of work. And so that's what really inspired me to start the consulting business. And starting your own business is scary. Yeah. And it's a lot of hard work, But if you believe honestly that what you are going to do, right, the service or the product that you're offering is really good, then that takes away some of the fear. So you have this internal motivation that this is the thing that I'm supposed to be doing with myself, or this is the way that I'm going to make this industry better. And I can't sit back and not do this. I have to. It's compelling me forward to make this happen. And it doesn't matter what that is, if it's making candles or it's, moving tanks, right? The desire is in there and you feel like you really have to do it, and you just sort of you take on the challenge and you give it a try.
So I heard you say that your dad really helped you, inspired you to do things. Was was he your mentor, or was many people your mentors? And what would you advise young women who are looking for a mentor?
So I did not have formal mentors until very recently. So when I was in journalism, I had some women in my journalism programs, professors, editors, who really took me under their wing. But as far as business is concerned, a lot of the interactions that I had were what I would call like remote mentors, right? So I would read books by authors that I respected, or I would follow people on social media and I would listen to what they had to say. And it's really true. People are always listening, right? So there are always people listening to what you say. And for me, that was a large part of it. Recently, I have gotten better at asking for mentorship. And so I would say to young women, ask, really ask, and value those mentoring relationships, because those of us who mentor young women are hungry for that interaction as well. Because I find that I mentor students at UC, I mentor students at Xavier, and I find that those relationships are as fulfilling for me as they are for the person I'm mentoring, right? I learn about myself, I learn about business, I learn from them, what they're going through and the life experiences that they've had. But the most beneficial of those relationships are when people are willing to make the connection and to do the work. So when you're asking to be mentored by somebody, typically they're going to be someone who's busy. And it's going to be hard for them to remember, oh, I need to set up an appointment with Lindy. Like I promised that I would mentor Lindy and I really need to set up an appointment with her. Whereas if you're taking ownership of that and saying, hey, I would love to sit down and talk to you about this, let's get something on the calendar, and obviously being aware of the fact that people are busy and not trying to meet with them weekly or something like that, but say, I'd love to sit down and talk to you. What kind of schedule would you like? And then I'll take responsibility for making sure those meetings get on the calendar, right? And taking that burden and that work off is really important. And then showing up to the mentorship meetings or the interactions that you have with people with questions, with thoughts, with ideas. Again, so when you prepare before you meet with somebody, I feel like there's a lot more benefit. Organic stuff will happen, conversations will develop, but my best mentoring, menteeing relationships always come when somebody shows up and they say, look, this is the situation I'm facing, or I need some advice on this, or this is what happened to me, and did I handle it the right way, and what would you advise that I do, right? So asking those pointed questions and coming in with ideas and with an ask, really. And not being afraid to ask for that help. That was one of my things. Ego was one of the reasons that I didn't ask for mentorship. I thought I should know how to do these things. So why would I ask somebody else? Because then there's also vulnerability in that, right? So there's vulnerability in saying, I'm stuck and I don't know what to do. Starting this new business and having what I refer to as my squad of women who are also business owners that I can pick up the phone and call when I'm lost or overwhelmed, and they help me through that, has been immensely helpful to me. I would not be as far along as I am now if I didn't have those folks, but it takes that vulnerable moment of picking up the phone and saying, I don't know what to do. Help me.
I'll have to agree with you with that one, that we should be able to ask and help set up appointments, because then it's giving you responsibility as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is there a gender gap within your work? If so, how did you face that?
I'm only laughing because, oh my gosh, yes, I'm in the trucking industry, right? The joke in our industry is that there are 5 of us women in freight, and we love it when we see each other at conferences because there's just it's just such a male dominated industry. But most industries are that way, unfortunately. There are and I'm in sales too. So sales and freight, you're talking about 2 industries that are very male dominated. And in the beginning, when I first started Legion Logistics, one of our competitors, huge logistics company here in Cincinnati, who are not very friendly to women, one of the owners of that company referred to me as the Avon lady. And they said, what could the Avon lady possibly know about running a freight company? Now, my dad was a truck driver. I grew up in trucking, right? There wasn't a whole lot that I didn't already know about how freight moved around the country. So I was insulted on so many levels with that one. Plus, it's not rocket science. Okay, we're moving freight from point A to point B. We are not, splitting the atom here. And I remembered that, and I carried it with me. And now every time there's an announcement in the paper about Legion or something like that, I always think, yeah, that's the Avon lady right there. Okay. So you can use that to propel you forward. The other thing is I have worked really hard to create opportunities for women inside my own organization, right? So that was really important to me. Third-party logistics brokerages, the type of company that I own, have a terrible reputation for being boys clubs, fraternities, environments that are not friendly for women, minorities, people of the LGBTQ plus community. Like, it's just not friendly. And I said, absolutely not. When I started Legion, I am not interested in running a company that looks like that. So my company is now 50% women. The leadership team is 50% women, and we're working on more diversity in the rest of our staff. We are getting ready to move our office, and we're moving closer to the city center. We're in Florence right now, but we're going to move to Newport so that we're closer to public transportation, and we can help overcome some of those obstacles that exist in having a more diverse workforce. For me too, it was remembering a lot of the fact that most of the stuff that happens when you're at a table with all men or you're on a panel with all men doesn't have anything to do with you, right? You're there, you're going to represent your lived experience, whatever that is, and you have to sort of put aside the rest of it in order to get your message across. And then you have to work really hard to create space for other people who are diverse, who may look like you, who may not look like you, but you create that space for diversity inside the organizations and the associations that you work within. And that's one of the reasons too that I love teaching at UC, because I've taught in their sales program for 5 years. They have these women in sales classes that are just sales classes for women. That's it. And it helps bring women into a field that is not necessarily historically friendly to women. And so anytime I can help create those opportunities, I'm going to do it 100%.
That is awesome how you have 50% of women doing it and 50% of male, because that's how it should be with everything, because it should be equal. And how would you motivate yourself and stay motivated even with those insults and men not being very nice?
Some days it's hard, right? So I know that I live in rarefied air as well. I own a company, right? So I get to dictate policy. I get to choose who I work with. And I understand that that puts me in a fairly exclusive position and a position of privilege. And I have to be really aware of when I'm giving other people advice too, who are working for other individuals or they're working for companies, that they may not have that same level of control over the situation that they're in. So I would say, when you're learning about a company before you join them, or an organization or a school or anything, pay really close attention to what the room looks and feels like so that you know that you're walking into a space that's going to make you feel comfortable, right? And don't dismiss that sort of feeling when you're like, I don't know about this. If you're going to take a job someplace and you have those options, really think about what the culture looks like and how you'll feel as whatever you are showing up there every day. And to stay motivated through it, it's, for me, it serves as a motivation itself, right? So that quip about the Avon lady, that lights a fire, right? And you can either let the stuff break you down, or you can allow it to motivate you further. And there's so much more work that has to be done around diversity, but all we can do is continue to push forward, right? The best time to solve this would have been 200 years ago. The second best time to solve it is now. And so that's what we have to do. That's what we have to focus on. And so for me, it is really a motivation to continue having those conversations and to continue centering the issues that need to be centered, and to continue trying to attract more people to the field, to fill the pipeline with as many diverse candidates as I can, and then to make sure that I myself am removing myself as much as I can from the conversation too, because it's really easy as the boss to be like, oh, I'm in the middle of this conversation, but I'm not necessarily the most important person here. So let's talk about that. And then let's wake up tomorrow and do it again, right? And if I have an experience with a vendor or a customer or a strategic partner where they do something that I don't agree with, that's the end of that relationship, right? Again, rarefied air that I am in a position where I can do that, but I don't excuse that kind of behavior anymore because I am in a position of power. And so I say, no, done, not doing it. We're not working together anymore. And I've fired customers and vendors over that kind of stuff because it's what I can do.
How would you say you relax yourself and when people may not be as nice as you would like them, both female and male? Um, and how would you say what you would do um, for your mental health?
So mental health is huge. I struggled with my mental health for a really long time. And I have a TED talk about that, about experiences that I've had. That I don't particularly always, my daughter's here and I don't always talk about that kind of stuff now because she's only 9.5, right? But there are experiences that I've had. I wish that I had discovered meditation earlier in my life, right? I wish that I had fostered that environment of taking space and breathing for myself earlier, because I struggle with anxiety, I struggle with depression, and I have, I have my panic moments, right? And there's nothing wrong with any of that. And I think that we're moving toward a place as a community where we're becoming more accepting of those issues, because it's health. It's not a failing, it's health. It's just like me saying I have diabetes, right? I have depression. It's the same thing, but you have to treat it. And so for me, treatment of anxiety or treatment of depression, or keeping myself even in a really good headspace. So as I'm working and trying to avoid burnout, it's meditation. It's trying to get enough rest, which is a challenge for women always. It's trying to eat right. It's exercising and getting out in nature. So I was feeling a little burned out. I just took a few days and went to a cabin in Red River Gorge. Like, we didn't see anybody, but I saw a lot of trees, and that was nice. And it's trying to maintain perspective on what's really important. So I have a great family, and I have my health, and I have a great situation here. I'm very, very fortunate in the life that I have, and I have to remember that, and I have to remind myself of the right perspective, because otherwise sometimes things become overwhelming, right? And it can. I never want to tell somebody, oh, well, be grateful, because be grateful can feel like another thing we should do, right? Oh, well, I should be grateful, as well as I should do squats, as well as I should curl my hair, right? There are all these things that I should be doing that I'm not, and gratitude is another one of them. It's more like working on my mental strength to get to a point where I can say, okay, yeah, today was a crappy day. It was awful. I got yelled at. I lost a customer. My daughter, didn't do as well on her spelling test as she wanted to. But let's bring it all back in and refocus, and maybe sit quietly for 15 minutes and just breathe and bring myself back to center. And if you've not tried meditation, there's some really great resources out there for both younger folks and for adults. And I use an app for my meditation, which is great. It's called 10% Happier. It's really straightforward. It doesn't subscribe to any particular religious or belief system. It's pretty straightforward stuff. Other people find it in prayer too. I know that that is a form of meditation. So other people approach it that way. I think it's the same basic structure, honestly. And it's just breathing and shutting everything down for a few minutes and trying to get better. And it's a practice for a reason, because you're not always great at it, but you got to keep practicing.
Yeah, because many people have different ways they would relax, and I really like how you do. That sounds really effective. Um, what is something you learned from Girl Scouts that you carry with you today?
So for me, Girl Scouts was really a neat experience. I moved to a different school in first grade, right? So I went to kindergarten in one school and I transferred to a different school in first grade, which doesn't sound that traumatic, except if you're me and you're super anxious and you struggle with making friends. And it was tough. It was a lot. And so becoming part of the Girl Scout troop at my new school was really great for me, because it was a way for me to connect and for me to figure out that one of the best ways that I connect with people is through shared activity. So if we're sewing together or if we're camping together, if I have a purpose behind it, that shared activity can build connections and build bonds, where just trying to walk up to somebody and talk to them can be overwhelming, right? Even now, I'm an introvert, so it's really hard for me just to walk up to people and try to start some sort of conversation or relationship with them. And I think that it was really cool for me too, because of the school that I went to was really tiny. And so basically all the girls in the grade were in the Girl Scout troop, right? There was like 9 of us. And it was a wonderful way for me too to experience other people's, styles and situations, right? So learning about how other people interact, because you're not doing group projects necessarily when you're in elementary school, right? There's independent work and that sort of thing. But in Girl Scouts, we were, we were camping, we were putting together a luau program. I remember at day camp once we had to do a luau and we all wore paper, and it rained and our our paper skirts just melted. These things you remember, right? I was 8. And so for me it was really about that. It was about this way that you can create community and you can create relationships through this shared experience and through a purpose of learning stuff. I like to learn stuff, and it's cool for me to watch my daughter like learn to sew. I didn't keep those lessons. I'll be clear with you about that. I am not a sewer, but she's sewing masks and headbands for herself now. She's learning how to whittle and fish and do all this stuff that we wouldn't necessarily do. And it's cool to see that over again and to remember what my own experiences were as a Girl Scout.
I would have to agree. And being in Girl Scouts, I've realized that when you're in Girl Scouts, you're like a family, and it's a lot easier to make friends in Girl Scouts than, say, at school, because everyone understands you more.
Absolutely.
We are starting the Girl Scout cookie program in January. What advice do you have for Girl Scout young entrepreneurs?
So, as a sales professional, Girl Scout cookie sales time is close to my heart, right? Because you guys are out there. And I just think that the benefit here with Girl Scout cookies is you've got a product that everybody wants, right? I don't know that there's anything else in the world that sells better than Girl Scout cookies, because people love them. And the Girl Scouts are so smart because you can only get them one time a year. And so you're waiting all year for your Thin Mints. That's my favorite, Thin Mints. And so it's remembering like this is a product people want, and then focusing on the benefits to your Girl Scout troop as well. So you're selling on product, right? So you're selling on the fact that, yeah, these are Thin Mints and you want them. But it's also, yes, these are Thin Mints, and the money that you're spending when you're buying the cookies helps our troop do X, Y, and Z, right? So then you're selling on value too. And I think it's important to approach both of those perspectives, because, you never know what your buying audience is looking for. Maybe they're a cookie addict. Maybe they just really like supporting the Girl Scouts. And so it's remembering both of those things and talking to people, trying to meet people where they are, really is sort of the lingo for that. Is, finding out, are they buying for the value that they're providing the Girl Scouts, or because they want to put 300 boxes of Thin Mints in their basement to see if they can make it through to next cookie season.
A few years ago, I had a really big troop, and we all sold a lot of cookies so we could earn enough money to be able to go to Savannah, Georgia to fund for our trip.
Wow.
And this year we have, or last year we had less girls. We have 5 now, and we we were earning. We had to sell 1,000 boxes of Girl Scout cookies to be able to go to Camp Judy Lane this summer, but it's going next summer instead.
Yeah. Thank you, COVID.
Oh, um, um, what's in Savannah is like, one second.
Do you remember, Lindy? Do you want me to? It's okay. It's Julia Gordon-Lowe's.
Yeah, Julia
Girl Scouts
Gordon-Lowe's
founded.
birthplace,
Yeah.
and her first meeting like place, and we took that trip so we could experience everything that happened in Savannah when Juliet Gordon-Lowe first started Girl Scouts. And we saw like the first like schoolhouse they used for meetings. We saw her birthplace. We saw many things. It was really fun.
Awesome.
What's the most helpful class someone can take in high school or college if they are interested in entrepreneurship?
Is it cheating if I say sales? It probably is. I'm prejudiced. No, I think that, and this is what I tell everyone. So I teach a sales program at Aviator Accelerator, so at the Women's Business Accelerator that I teach at. And the first question that they always ask, typically women entrepreneurs always ask, is how soon can I hand off the sales responsibilities of my business to somebody else? And they never like my answer because the answer is never. You can't. When you're an entrepreneur, you are constantly selling the idea of your company, or you're selling the actual product or service that your company is selling, or which I'm doing right now, I'm trying to get our bank loan renewed, right? And it's a crazy credit environment out there. And so I'm selling to the bank always, to say, hey, we're a great business, you should loan us money. And it's always part and parcel of what you're doing. So learning some basic skills, not because you want to go out and sell somebody else's product or service, but learning basic skills in that is, I think, really, really important. And the second thing I would say is communication. Any type of business communication class that you can take. The biggest struggle that I have with my students at the college level, and I'm teaching juniors and seniors at college. So these are folks who've been in college 3 or 4 years. I ask them to write papers for me. Not long papers, but papers. And the stuff that they turn in is questionable sometimes, right? Grammar, spelling, punctuation. Like, how did you get to this point in college with this? And it's not because I want them to write poetry or Shakespeare or be a novelist. It's because if you're going to effectively communicate with the people around you, whether that's coworkers, whether that's vendors, whether that's, people that you want to finance your business, you have to be able to at least put together a decent email with grammar, spelling, and punctuation, right? And you might have to write a business plan with grammar, spelling, and punctuation. So learning how to communicate persuasively and clearly, I think, it will never fail you, because you will use that in whatever job that you end up in. I had students in my sales classes who were photography majors, who were accounting majors, because they thought, number one, that they might want to start a business someday. And number two, that they wanted to get better at persuasive communication. I mean, it breaks down to two. All right, let's decide what we're eating for dinner tonight. I want burgers, you want pizza. Somebody's selling here and somebody's getting sold. So if we end up with burgers, the person who wanted burgers was more persuasive than the person who wanted pizza. And so you can apply these techniques and this persuasive communication in all areas of your life. It doesn't have to do with business. But I will say I win pretty much every time we're trying to decide where to eat dinner, because my husband's an artist and I'm a salesperson. So it's a good skill to have.
For the email thing you said, I'm in 7th grade, as Noelle said, and our teachers, all of our teachers, if we email them and we don't use punctuation or we don't use correct spelling, they will email us back and say you need to resend our email and use proper spelling and grammar.
Awesome.
Were there any classes that you took that helped you when you started your first business?
Actually, this is so funny. My journalism classes helped me so much, right? Because I didn't take any business courses before I started my first business. None. Had none of that. That's why I went on to get my MBA, because I thought I need some foundation in business knowledge if I'm going to keep doing this. My journalism classes taught me to be curious, and they taught me to communicate. And that curiosity has been so helpful for me because I'm able to talk to other people and be interested in them and get information about them and create connections with them and not always center myself in that conversation. I'd much rather ask questions. Like, this is a weird situation for me because I'd rather be in your seat, Lindy, uh, than answering all the questions, because I'm totally curious about people and I'm curious about their situations. And for me, learning how to ask questions and to feel comfortable in that space of, and sometimes asking uncomfortable questions, right? Like, I interviewed people and had to ask them difficult questions. And I learned too that nobody can stand silence. Human beings can't stand silence. So if I'm having a conversation with somebody and I want more information than what they're giving me, I'll just stop talking and I'll wait, because it's a really hard thing to wait through a silence without wanting to fill it with something. And usually you fill it with stuff that you didn't mean to say in the first place. And so you can get really great information. It works great on kids, I will tell you that. Just staring silently at your child while they tell you all sorts of things that you maybe didn't want to know. But yeah, those classes really helped lay the foundation for what I did. And then calculus humbled me. So that was great. I did not do well in calculus, and that was some humility that I probably needed to say, yeah, I don't think I'll be a statistician. I think that is probably off the table for me always. But you know, the challenge was interesting.
So, this is adding another question, I'm sorry. But what was your favorite class that you took, and why was it?
I took a class on the First Amendment in my undergrad, right? And it was a one-on-one class with a professor. So I was in the honors college, and every semester we got one class that was one-on-one with a professor, and it was journalism law and the First Amendment, and it was really, really impactful for me understanding what the First Amendment meant, how important it is, how we need to protect it, and how I, as a journalist at that time, needed to defend that right to free speech and you know, the ability to gather. And for me, that was really life changing. And the professor was really hard, right? So she didn't, and when you're one-on-one with a professor, you can't hide. There's no point when they ask a question and you can just sit and be like, well, someone else will answer that because you're it. And so coming face to face with that type of challenge, I couldn't coast. I really had to dig in and be analytical, and it was wonderful. You know, I can still remember sitting in her office with her on class days and handing over paper like with shaking hands, because it was like, oh, I don't know if this is good enough, because her expectations were so high, which was great, you know.
That is really, it sounds really cool. My favorite class, which we only have 4 classes, my favorite is social studies. I like learning about history and the world around us. What advice would you give someone who doesn't know what they want to be when they grow up, and what would you do?
What I'm still doing. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I don't really. And this is the thing, I think, and especially young women. I think this happens to young women more than young men, because I think young men get a pass on this sometimes. And I'm making sweeping generalizations here, but I also had a brother, and I saw, we were only 18 months apart in age, right? 1 year in school. And I saw the differences in how we were expected to interact with the world and behave. And my brother's a great guy, and we work together to this day, right? But it was totally cool for him to have no idea what he was going to do. And then I, on the other hand, was like, I got to know. I have to know. And I spent a lot of time in high school and in my undergrad thinking, this is it. I have made my decision, and this is what I'm going to do. And what happened was when I realized that I was not going to be a journalist. Like, that was not really a career that I was going to be able to follow, because when I started college, newspapers were still doing okay and they were hiring people. And by the time I graduated, they weren't doing that anymore. And those of you who lived through sort of the dot-com revolution of the early 2000s know what I'm talking about. And when that happened, it was completely disorienting for me, because I had no flexibility in my plan. There was no flexibility at all. And so I thought, if I don't do this exact thing that I said I was going to do, I have failed, right? I have failed because I haven't done the thing that I said I was going to do. And what I've learned as I've gotten older is that we control very little, and life changes very quickly. I think 2020 has shown us all that, right? None of us thought that this is what we were going to be doing, right? And we're here and we're doing fine and we're surviving and we're having these kinds of great conversations. But 6 months ago, that would have been hard to perceive. And I would say, don't put that kind of pressure on yourself. Explore things that interest you, right? Get real life experience in the things that you think you want to do. So one of the best things that I did as a journalism major was I went to DC on an internship, and I thought I was going to be a political reporter. So I got an internship as a political reporter for a newswire for 6 months, and I hated it. I hated it. I did not want to write about politics. I didn't like the confrontational nature of political reporting, and it was an eye-opener for me. I actually liked writing like personal interest stories. I call them refrigerator stories, right? So they're the ones that you cut out of the fridge. Like, what am I going to pack in my lunch today? That's the stuff I really liked writing. And I wouldn't have known that if I didn't get that experience. And I could have entered my first job not knowing that and then being really unhappy. So I would encourage you to get as much experience in different things as you can. So internships, co-ops, jobs, job shadows, follow your parents to work, whatever it is that you can do to experience different career paths. And I understand absolutely the economics behind needing to have a job, right? I put myself through college. I have been financially independent since I was 18, and I grew up in a very working class family, right? So we did not have much. And so there was no safety net underneath me. So I understand absolutely, yes, you have to have a job. And so chase your dream sometimes sounds like a fantasy when you're like, yeah, but I got a car payment. So you figure out other ways to chase that dream, right? So you're making the car payment, but you're also writing the book, or you're doing that other thing. And don't ever think that you have to have it figured out. I did not think I would start a trucking freight company. Like, that was never in the plan. And then I certainly didn't think that I would be doing it for 11 years and that now I'd be starting a consulting company at the same time, right? And life is just always changing. And the most important thing is just to stay true to who you are inside. I've taken jobs before that I didn't love what I was doing and I didn't believe in what I was selling. Like, I sold makeup. The reason they called me the Avon lady was I sold makeup for a while with a fine company, but I never paid $15 for mascara, and I couldn't bring myself to make other people pay $15 for mascara, right? It felt icky to me. And so it didn't work. And I felt bad about myself when I did it. And so it was like, okay, well, what can I do that I feel good about, that I can wake up every morning and feel good about, even if it's selling freight services, right? That's not, like I said, that wasn't anything that I dreamed about, but it's great. And it's a useful part of our economy. And I believe in it. And like, take that pressure off yourself. Especially, I did that stuff to myself when I was your age, Lindy. I was like, I better know what I'm going to be when I grow up. It's like, you're in the 7th grade. What the heck? We don't even know what the world is going to look like when you're a grown-up, kiddo. Everything is changing. So just, relieve that pressure and use that time to explore and figure stuff out.
I just cut out. What did you say at the end? I heard like we're in 7th grade and then it cut out.
Oh yeah, take the pressure off yourself to figure out what you need to be when you grow up. Like, and if you're doing that, right? I did that. That's what I'm using myself as the example there, because the world is going to look completely different in 5 years when you graduate from high school, right? It's the world is changing so fast.
Anne Elizabeth asked, what is your favorite, most empowering quote and why?
Okay. So there's a couple. The first is a Robert Frost quote. And it gets paraphrased all the time, and I paraphrase it too, but Robert Frost, who's a poet, the way that I say it and the way that I see it said a lot is the only way out is through. And he says it differently. And so I apologize. If you look it up, I'm sure you'll be like, yeah, she's saying that wrong. And I am. But what that means is whenever you're in a difficult situation, the only way to get out of that difficult situation is to get through it. And I remind myself of that often when things seem really hard. And I say, I just wish this were done. And it can't be, right? Because even if you quit, you still got to get out of it somehow, right? So that's a big one for me. And then there's a Calvin Coolidge quote about persistence, and my parents had it in our kitchen, and it's a long one, but at the end of the day, the very end of the quote says, persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. And the quote talks about how you can be a genius and not succeed, and you can be incredibly talented and not succeed. The only thing that you can control here, and the paramount thing that you can do, is to be persistent and to be determined. So if you decide that you want to do a thing, you don't necessarily have to be the most talented at it. You don't have to be the most gifted. You don't have to be a genius. You just have to work at it repeatedly, even when it gets hard, even when people say no to you, even when it seems like it's not going to happen. You have to keep persisting and to get through it. And so that quote is actually on the wall of my office at Legion, the whole big long one. And the other one is sort of just tattooed on my brain, I think, at this point.
Yeah, because so when, like, you have to fail many times to get your end goal, and you should, if you have something you're entitled to want to do, then you should make it happen. You should keep following through with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If anyone else has any other questions, you can put them in the chat.
Happy to answer anything.
Yeah. Or if you have a quote you want to share. And I think that was all the questions we had. So if you all do, we can hang out here for a minute if you want to ask any more. If anybody has any questions for Lindy, and I know we have some other Girl Scouts on the call, feel free to ask. If not, thank you all so much for joining us. This has been great. I think this is our 4th session. We'll be doing these through March. Going forward, we're going to still offer a live option, but we're going to be definitely recording and getting those posted at least every other Fridays as we can.
I love this. Janet Hill, I guess, just put in here that failure is only feedback. And I think that's so true. And it's, it's such a thing to remember that if everything were easy, it wouldn't mean much, right? So the things that are easy for us don't mean as much as the things that we have to work for. And especially now when things are challenging, right? And things are changing all the time. And I know that that's a struggle, especially if you're trying to do school from home, or you're trying to work from home while your kids are doing school from home, right? We've been in those situations. And there's a lot that's not awesome about this period in our history, but the resilience that we can foster in ourselves through this process, I think, could be really fantastic for all of us. And Lindy, I have to say you did an awesome job. I am so impressed.
Thank you.
For a 7th grader to be able to do this is wonderful. You're a better interviewer than plenty of adults who've interviewed me in my life. So thank you for that. That is wonderful. This is good experience.
Thank you for talking to us. I really liked everything you said. It will for sure help girls understand other things.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate the opportunity, ladies. This has been fun.
Thank you all so much. We appreciate it. Have a great evening, everyone.